Write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I genuinely want to know who's on the other side of this screen. And if this video hits different, the best thing you can do for the channel is subscribe and hit like. It costs you nothing, and it means everything. Now, let me ask you something. You've been doing everything right. You're saving, you're watching what you spend, you're not blowing money on things you don't need. And yet, it still feels like you're basically standing still. Like no matter how disciplined you are, the number in your account barely moves, like gravity is working against you. And you start to wonder, is it me? Am I missing something? Or is the game just harder for some people? Here's what nobody tells you. It's not you, and it's not that the game is harder for you specifically. It's that there is a real, documented, mathematically provable tipping point in personal finance. And until you cross it, saving money feels like pushing a boulder uphill in wet sand. But the moment you cross it, something almost invisible shifts. And the same effort that felt pointless before starts to actually work. That number, for most working Americans, it's somewhere around $50,000. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why that number matters, why the journey to get there is so disproportionately painful, and what you can actually do about it without losing your mind in the process. Real quick, if you're new here, this channel is about understanding money the way nobody explained it to you growing up. Subscribe if that sounds like something you need. Now, back to it. Here's the thing about the first $50,000. Most financial content treats it like a mindset problem, like if you just believed in yourself more, or tracked your expenses more obsessively, or cut out the coffee, yes, still with the coffee, then everything would fall into place. And I want to be really honest with you about that framing. It's not wrong, but it's wildly incomplete. The reason it feels so hard to save early on has almost nothing to do with your discipline, and almost everything to do with math, and a little bit of human psychology that works directly against you when your balance is low. When you're starting from zero or close to it, every single dollar you save represents a massive percentage of your total wealth. That sounds obvious, but think about what that actually means emotionally. You save $300 this month. You feel good. You feel like you're making progress. Then your car needs a repair, or your kid gets sick, or your landlord raises your rent, and suddenly that $300 is gone. And worse, you feel like you're back at zero. Not just financially, emotionally. That feeling of starting over repeatedly is one of the most demoralizing experiences in adult life, and it keeps a lot of people stuck. Not because they're bad with money, because the early stages of building wealth are genuinely, objectively punishing. And here's the part that really gets me. Nobody warns you about this. You get told to save, you get told to invest, you get told the magic of compound interest. But nobody sits you down and says, hey, the first stretch is going to feel like it's not working. It's going to feel like you're invisible to the system. And that's actually normal. That's not a sign you're failing. That's just the terrain. So let's actually talk about what changes at $50,000 and why that number specifically. There's a concept in investing called compound interest. You've probably heard it 100 times, but what most explanation skips is the fact that compounding is almost invisible until you hit a certain mass. Think of it like a snowball, barely notice a difference. But once it gets big enough, once it has enough mass, every rotation suddenly adds way more snow than the last one. The hill does more work than you do. That's the $50,000 mark for most people. At that level, with a reasonable return, let's say 7% annually, which is historically conservative for a diversified index fund, your money is generating roughly $3,500 a year on its own. That's almost $300 a month working for you while you sleep. That's a car payment. That's a good chunk of rent. That's money that shows up whether you had a great month or a terrible one. And as that number grows, the passive growth accelerates in a way that your active savings simply cannot. But here's the psychological layer that nobody talks about. Before you hit that threshold, saving money requires constant willpower. Every decision is a sacrifice. You're choosing between present comfort and future security, over and over, with very little visible reward. Behavioral economists call this something like delayed gratification fatigue. Your brain is wired to respond to immediate rewards, and when your account barely moves despite real sacrifice, your brain starts to question the whole strategy. That's not weakness. That's just how human brains are built. So what happens? People give up. Or they lifestyle inflate the moment they get a raise because they feel like they've been depriving themselves, and in a way they have. Or they tell themselves they'll start investing when things calm down, and things never calm down, and years go by. This is the trap, and it's not a character flaw. It's a perfectly logical response to a system that gives you almost no feedback until you've already been consistent for years. Think about someone making $55,000, $60,000 a year. They're not rich, but they're not broke either. They're somewhere in the anxious middle. Too much month at the end of the money, as they say. They're saving maybe $200 or $300 a month when life cooperates. At that rate, getting to $50,000 in savings can take the better part of a decade. And during that whole decade, the compounding math is still small enough that it barely registers. So they're saving by willpower alone. No momentum, just discipline, every single month. That's exhausting, and it's supposed to be. I'm not saying that to be discouraging. I'm saying it so you understand that if you're in that place right now, you're not doing it wrong. You're just in the hardest part of the climb. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Research on financial behavior shows that people who reach that first significant savings milestone, somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000, tend to exhibit dramatically different financial behavior going forward. Their savings rate often increases. They take more considered risks. They feel more in control. It's not because they suddenly became different people. It's because the feedback loop finally changed. They can see the snowball growing. The math is finally working visibly in their favor, and that visibility is enormously motivating in a way that nothing else really is. By the way, if this is resonating with you, if this is the kind of conversation you've been looking for, consider subscribing. I make videos like this regularly, and I'd love to have you here for all of them. Now, let's keep going.
Here's the mindset shift that I think actually matters. And it took me a while to land on this, so I want to say it carefully. Most people think about money as a destination. Like there's a number, and once you hit it, you'll feel okay, you'll feel safe, you'll be able to breathe. And while there's something to that, financial security is real and it matters. The problem with that framing is that it makes the entire journey feel like punishment. Like you're just surviving until you arrive somewhere. What changes after 50,000 isn't just the math. It's that you start to understand, maybe for the first time, that money is not the goal. It's a tool. And tools work better when they have momentum behind them. Up until that point, you've been carrying the tool by yourself, doing all the work manually. But once your savings hit that threshold, the tool starts to carry itself a little. And a little becomes a lot over time. There's also something that happens to your relationship with risk. Not recklessness. I'm not talking about gambling your savings. But when you have nothing saved, every financial decision feels like it could break you. You don't negotiate your salary because you can't afford to lose the job. You don't invest in yourself professionally because you can't afford the short-term disruption. You stay in situations longer than you should, jobs, apartments, relationships even, because the financial cushion to leave simply isn't there. $50,000 doesn't make you rich. But it does give you options, and options are what freedom actually looks like in practical terms. That shift, from feeling trapped to feeling like you have at least some agency over your choices, that's the real tipping point. It's not just about the number, it's about what the number represents psychologically. It represents margin, space, the ability to say no to something without catastrophic consequences. And once you felt that, you start making different decisions everywhere. Better decisions, not because you're suddenly wiser, but because you're no longer making decisions from a place of desperation. So what do you actually do with this? Because knowing the theory is one thing, the practical reality is another. The first thing I'd say is this: stop measuring your progress in dollars and start measuring it in months of expenses. If your monthly expenses are $3,000 and you have $9,000 saved, you have 3 months of runway. That framing is more meaningful than a raw dollar figure because it anchors the number to your actual life. Work towards 6 months of expenses as a baseline before you aggressively invest. That's your shock absorber. That's what keeps a car repair from derailing your entire plan. Second, and this one matters more than most people realize, automate as much as possible. The research on this is incredibly consistent. People who automate their savings save significantly more than people who manually transfer money, not because they're more disciplined, but because they remove the decision entirely. Every time you have to consciously choose to save, you're spending willpower, and willpower is a limited resource. Take the decision off the table. Have a portion of your paycheck go somewhere else before you ever see it, even if it's small, especially if it's small. Third, Get clear on the difference between growing your income and reducing your expenses, and understand which one is actually your bottleneck. If you're making $40,000 a year and spending 38, no amount of budgeting is going to dramatically change your trajectory. The math just doesn't have enough room. In that case, your energy is better spent on the income side, whether that's a raise, a second income stream, a career move, a certification. I'm not telling you to hustle yourself into the ground. I'm telling you to look honestly at the numbers and ask where the real leverage is. And fourth, be ruthless about high-interest debt, but not in the panicked way. If you're carrying credit card debt at 20% interest, that's a guaranteed negative return on your money. Paying that off is the equivalent of earning 20% on an investment, which almost nothing in the legal market will give you. Clear that before you invest aggressively. The math demands it. None of this is glamorous. None of this is going to feel like a breakthrough in the moment, but consistently applied over 3 to 5 years, these things compound, not just financially, behaviorally. You build evidence that you can do this, and that evidence changes how you think about money forever.
I want to leave you with something that I genuinely believe, and that I wish someone had told me earlier. The fact that saving money is hard right now doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're in the part of the climb that everyone who's ever built anything had to go through, the part where the effort is real and the results are invisible. That gap between effort and visible outcome is where most people quit, and I understand why. It feels like evidence that it's not working, but it's actually just evidence that you're early. The people who cross that $50,000 line and then 100 and then beyond aren't people who had it easier in the beginning. Most of them had it just as hard, maybe harder. What separated them wasn't a secret strategy or a better income or a lucky break. It was the ability to stay in the game long enough for the math to start working in their favor. That's it. That's the whole thing. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. A month where you save $100 is better than a month where you save nothing. A year where you clear one debt is better than a year where you ignored it. Progress over perfection is not just a nice phrase. It's actually how wealth gets built for regular people in the real world. You're not behind. You're just in the early innings, and the game is a lot longer than anyone tells you. If this video helped you see your situation a little differently, even slightly, that's all I was going for. Subscribe to the channel if you want more of these conversations. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're at in your journey. I read them. And hit the like button if this landed for you. It helps more people find this, and that matters to me. I'll see you in the next one.